Hello, I'm Langston, and today I'm going to be talking about the underestimation of Kamala Harris. And I think it's a very controversial topic, especially in political spaces. Kamala Harris is seen as the worst candidate ever. Like, she's some absolutely abysmal Democratic candidate. And I'm not going to sit up here and act like Kamala Harris is the best Democratic candidate, but she's not as weak as people make her out to be. And when looking at her approval rating, it varies depending on the site. For example, YouGov has her at 44%, while 538 has her at 38%, relative to Joe Biden's 41%. So she's not substantially more unpopular than Joe Biden. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's approval is different. Like, for example, Kamala Harris is more popular than Joe Biden amongst young voters, amongst black voters in particular, which really isn't that big of a flex considering that she is the first black woman to be a vice president. And she's also more popular than Joe Biden amongst Hispanic Latino voters. But she's substantially less popular than Joe Biden amongst educated and uh, amongst suburban and independent moderate candidates and independent moderate voters in particular. So with that, I just want to point out that Kamala, she has a lot of weaknesses, but she does not have as many as people make her out to be. And going back to 2020, Joe Biden was able to flip the Rust Belt states, and he was able to flip Georgia and Arizona. And going back to 2016, Donald Trump was able to win because he was able to dominate in the Rust Belt and flip back Florida. And when looking at this, where people really underestimate Kamala Harris is in some of these places across these states. We've seen weak Democratic candidates that got underestimated. Like, for example, everyone thought Katie Hobbs was going to lose. Everyone thought that John Fetterman was going to lose. And everybody thought that Mandela Barnes was going to get smacked in the face. And none of those three happened. So weak Democratic candidates have proven, and Tony Evers, for example, Tony Evers was an unpopular governor, and he still won by three times the margin that he won in 2018. So weak Democratic candidates have proven that they can hold on. You don't necessarily need to be a strong Democratic candidate to win, as Katie Hobbs proved. So candidate quality does not matter so much on the Democratic side as it matters on the Republican side. So when people talk about how Kamala Harris is such a weak candidate, she doesn't have an appeal anywhere, it's not realistically being real because I know many people that are very supportive of Kamala Harris, especially black women in particular. She is very popular amongst that demographic. And I know that's kind of biased considering that she is a black woman, obviously, but I'm just saying that there's a lot of voters that do like Kamala Harris and a lot of voters that she would do better than Joe Biden amongst. And when talking about that, for example, one of the main reasons Hillary Clinton lost is because she was not able to get out these urban black voters in Milwaukee, in Detroit, in the Philadelphia area. And that's not a place that Kamala Harris would struggle. So, right off the bat, what caused Hillary Clinton to lose, Kamala Harris would not have to really worry about. Now, I do think Kamala Harris is a very weak candidate for the working class parts of these states, but Joe Biden, who is stronger than Hillary Clinton, still did worse in these working class regions. Like, look at all these working class regions that shifted against Joe Biden in 2024. Like, look at these places in Wisconsin. Like, all of these working class areas, they still shifted. They continue to shift against Democrats regardless of the candidate. Look in Pennsylvania. Look at these working class counties. Like, they still shifted against Democrats. And you saw this in 2022, where with stronger candidates like JD Vance and John Fetterman for the working class, like, these counties still weren't too strong for Democrats in 2024. And that was with Trump's base not coming out in the Rust Belt. So my point is, these working class voters are going to shift against Democrats regardless. So Kamala Harris being weak amongst those voters, which she is, that's not even debatable. It doesn't necessarily matter because those voters are going to shift against Democrats regardless. But as we saw, these suburban voters, they still voted for John Fetterman. Like, they still voted for John Fetterman. They won Katie Hobbs the governorship in Arizona. So what I'm saying is, these suburban voters have proved that candidate quality doesn't necessarily matter for Democrats. Like, even progressive candidates, like all three of those candidates, still did well in the suburbs, which is really shocking. And Kamala Harris has much more appeal to more moderate suburban voters relative to someone like John Fetterman or Mandela Barnes. Like, let's just be realistic. She's a lot more moderate. She's someone that has a history of being tough on crime. Like, she has more appeal to suburban voters than someone like John Fetterman or Katie Hobbs would have. And she has a lot more appeal to black voters and even Joe Biden, but way more than Hillary Clinton, who lost because she failed to turn out that demographic. And she is a former senator from California, and her approval amongst Hispanic Latino voters is higher than Joe Biden. So that would help her in places like Nevada and Arizona. And we just saw that Katie Hobbs was even able to win Arizona. So if Katie Hobbs can win Arizona, I don't think Kamala Harris would have realistically any trouble winning in Arizona. In Nevada, for example, she would do better in Clark County than Joe Biden. I think she'd do worse in Reno and other parts of the state, but roughly 70% of the state's population is in Clark County. So with that, and considering that Steve Sisolak still did better than Joe Biden with Hispanic Latino voters, Kamala Harris should feel pretty confident there. This is a left-trending suburban district in Nebraska's second district, so Kamala Harris realistically shouldn't have too much worries there. In Michigan, Hillary Clinton was only able to lose Michigan because black turnout in Detroit collapsed. And yes, Kamala Harris would get destroyed with the working class in Michigan, but so does every Democratic candidate, except for maybe Gretchen Whitmer. And the suburbs in Michigan, they're still going to shift in Democrats' favor regardless of the candidate, as we saw in the neighboring states, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. So realistically, Kamala Harris shouldn't realistically have too many problems in Michigan. And Georgia and North Carolina are pretty strong suits for Kamala Harris because we know that the majority of Democrats in those states are black, and she's more popular than Joe Biden amongst black voters. So in places like Georgia, she's going to do better in Fulton County, in DeKalb County, in Clayton County, in Newton County, in Henry County, in Douglas, and Rockdale. I don't think she do as well as Gwinnett and Cobb County, but I do think that in a lot of these Atlanta suburban counties, as we saw with Raphael Warnock, because Raphael Warnock was able to do better with black voters than Joe Biden, he was able to outperform Joe Biden in Georgia. So with Kamala Harris, she should be fine in places like Georgia, and that gives her the presidency. And that's not even negating the fact that she still would do better in Philadelphia and Milwaukee than Joe Biden. She still hold her ground in the Philadelphia suburbs and do well in Pittsburgh and Madison. So she realistically has a pretty good chance of winning all of the states left on the board. And I'm not saying that Kamala Harris is the strongest Democratic candidate. I'm not saying that she is the best candidate or even a candidate Democrats can nominate, but it's foolish for Republicans to think that she's so weak of a candidate. And it's something that Democrats did. Democrats thought Donald Trump was so weak of a candidate, and they wanted him to be the 2024 Republican nominee, and it backfired. We saw it backfire with Katie Hobbs. It almost backfired in Wisconsin with Mandela Barnes, and it backfired with John Fetterman in Pennsylvania. And one of the only smart decisions that Mitch McConnell made in the 2022 Senate elections was to not take money out of Ron Johnson's reelection bid. He kept investing money into Ron Johnson, raising 3 times the money that Mandela Barnes was able to raise. And that really proved to be very useful because if he would have taken that money away from Ron Johnson and put it in other states, it's a realistic chance the Republicans could have lost Wisconsin, considering they only won it by 1% against a candidate that had basically no funding. So with that, I want to point out that there's a lot of places for Kamala Harris to improve. It's a lot of places where Kamala Harris would not do as bad as he would think she would do. And I'm not saying she's a strong candidate, but she's not as weak as people make her out to be. And I'm not saying that she's a candidate Democrats should nominate, but I'm not saying that she's a candidate that Republicans should be so hopeful to get either. So again, that's my video for today. Thank you guys so much for tuning into my channel, Military Election Forecasting. Make sure to subscribe and like the video down below. My next video will be about the underestimation of Donald Trump and talking about why a lot of people underestimate Donald Trump as a candidate, even though he's proven to not be underestimated. So make sure to tune into that as well. Thank you guys so much. Hope you guys have a great day, and thank you for tuning into my video.